Good morning. Actually, it's afternoon right now. Good afternoon, everybody on the RP YouTube community. Now, I am in a place that I just discovered. I'm not really sure where this is, but as you can see, the towers behind me, I'm in some sort of a broadcast area in around Lim Chu Kang. So today's video, I'm specifically going to be talking about how I set up my Versys X300 over there for off-road riding. Now, it's a video I wanted to do because it's true that most people that buy ADV motorcycles, they don't actually use it for its intended purpose, which is to, take it on the highways, the roads to a trail and then have some fun off-road. But for those of you that are out there that are interested in, what are the first things you should do to get an ADV motorcycle ready for that sort of adventure trip, follow on with this video because I'm going to share with you what I did for mine. Because truth be told, most ADV motorcycles, when sold out the door, they are not set up very well or very suited for off-road riding to begin with, because they are expecting that it has to meet certain public road safety requirements and to appeal to the wider audience, which is those that buy it for the looks but actually use it for the road. So I'm gonna get onto it. So this is my Kawasaki Versys X300. It's a smart looking bike now. Very nice looking the way I did it. Of course, it still looks normal to most, but the little touches here and there is what gets me sometimes. The first thing when you are looking to set up your motorcycle for off-road is the tires. For the most part, tires that are released with a motorcycle straight out of the factory, they tend to be 90-10 at most for ADV bikes. Very rarely do you get tires that are suited for maybe 80 road, 20 off-road, and almost never 50-50. The thing is, if you are planning to do anything more than getting off your gravel driveway, you will need a tire that is at least 50-50 biased towards the road and off-road, because otherwise most stock tires, they are absolutely not fun to ride on anything other than well-maintained gravel driveways and paths. So you have to be very honest with yourself up front as to what kind of riding you are going to do. Okay, for the vast majority of people, the stock tires that come out of the gate, assuming they are from a reputable manufacturer like Michelin or Pirelli or Bridgestone, they do, or even how many others? I don't think, only those three tires make stock tires that I feel are quite high in quality. So you have to be honest with yourself. Are you going to be mostly riding on the road and very occasionally once in a blue moon you are going to take it on a very simple gravel path? Then if you are that kind of rider, there is absolutely no reason to change your stock tires at all. Even something like the IRC GP210s that came stock on this bike, if I were mostly using it on the road, I would still not change it until it was worn down, and then I get something else like the Anarchy Adventure, for example, that's biased towards 90-10. But if you're a bit like me, who uses this motorcycle entirely for off-road purposes, and the only reason you're putting tires that are street legal or capable of the street is because you're just going to use the roads to bring your bike to a trail instead of having to tug it by a truck, which I don't have, and many of you in Singapore probably might not have as well, otherwise you'd buy a dirt bike instead. So for the most part, the most important thing after you buy a bike is the tires. Decide what kind of riding you want to do, and then pick a tire from that particular category. 50/50 like my Mitas E07 Plus here. That's for 50/50 riding. If you are somebody that's only going to be mostly using the road and then occasionally traveling on well manicured gravel paths, then the Michelin Anarchy Adventure that I also use on my Ducati Scrambler Desert Sled, those are perfect for that purpose. Now, the next important thing to consider getting on your ADV motorcycle is crash protection. Naturally, there is not a single piece of crash protection made for motorcycles that will keep your bike entirely free from dings and scratches if you do fall over occasionally. But it's still a worthwhile investment to get, because at the end of the day, when you go off-road, for any period of time, a slight fall or a spill is eventually going to happen, and it will happen a lot more often than you would if you were on a regular road. So I'm talking about putting your foot down to stop and trying to get your side stand down, and then your side stand sinks into the mud, or your foot slips on soft sand and then you drop your bike, that sort of thing. So while most of the drops off-road tend to be going to be a lot softer, they will be a lot more frequent than you would expect. So some important pieces that you might want to get is, of course, a pair of crash bars. For me, I have the stock factory crash bar option that I got from Kawasaki. You will also want to have some sort of protection for the rear as well. For me, I would use things like pannier rack. These racks used for holding panniers or side boxes. Of course, I'll be talking separately about whether you should bring side boxes or panniers later on, but if you can get them, they are nice to have to protect the rear of your bike. And for many motorcycles nowadays, they have a side slung and rather low slung exhaust, and this can help to protect the exhaust from damage when you drop it on the right side. And of course, the exhaust itself, it would be great to have some protection as well. Now, this exhaust guard here is rather useful to have. Of course, if you actually do drop it on your right side, it will be scratched. It will be scratched no matter what kind of protection you use, unless it's a high slung underseat exhaust like you would find on something like a DRZ or most dirt bikes. But all this will at least prevent too much of the false impact to transfer onto the exhaust itself, possibly making a larger dent or bending the mounts that the exhaust is mounted onto. Now then, on the front side of the bikes, this is a clear headlight guard. Now, a lot of people totally forget about protecting their headlights, and a lot of people, they go for the grille lights. But as you can see over here, mine are this plastic headlight guards instead of the grille ones that a lot of off-road riders go for. Now, the choice between either going for grille or plastic headlights depends on the kind of terrain that you are riding on. Grills definitely, of course, look better, but I went with the plastic headlight guards because at the end of the day, I'm mostly riding in terrain where the stuff that would get flung up on the trails if I'm riding behind somebody is going to be small, because it's mostly mud and small gravel paths with very small shards. If you are going to be riding in very rocky terrain where somebody's going to fling a fist-sized rock up into your bike, then a grill is going to be better. But a grill is not going to protect your bike against a small gravel-sized piece that is going to be flung up. I can't really see if there is something nearby that would illustrate, but usually the kind of gravel pieces that I ride on tend to be about the size of my thumbnail at most. Yeah, and they would go through a grill. That's why I chose the plastic headlight guards instead. The next thing you might want to have is, of course, hand guards. Now, hand guards is pretty self-explanatory. Everybody that rides off-road or buys an off-road bike will generally have hand guards already pre-installed on them, or they would absolutely know that they would need hand guards. But what kind of hand guards you will need really depends on the kind of riding you do as well. I find a lot of riders that generally only putt around town and go on flat trails like I do. Of course, not forgetting one thing that I forgot to mention about the protection is remember to get bash plates. I know a lot of higher end ADV bikes, they come with bash plate stock, especially like the GS and the Ducati Scrambler Desert Sled. Some of them do have bash plates that are good enough for most activities, but it depends on what you're going to do. If you're going to do a lot of rock climbing, then of course upgrade your bash plates. And in the case of my Versys X300, even though I'm not doing rock climbing or anything, I'm still getting a bash plate for myself, like this one, but a small one, because I don't really need a heavy duty bash plate for me. But having none at all is even worse. So the Versys X300, as well as the vast majority of lower tier ADV motorcycles in the lower CC range, they don't come with a bash plate stock, and I recommend that if you don't have one, get one. If you have one, on like if you're getting F800, F850 GS or F1250 GS, those things come with a rather decent bash plate. You can decide whether you want to upgrade or not, but for the most part, the stock ones on those bigger bikes will suffice. Now, another thing that I enjoy having you guys get apart from protection is, of course, something to ensure that you can control your bike off-road. Now, in a lot of ADV bikes, especially on the lower ends, you are getting stock foot pegs that are mostly rubber mounted, like the ones that I had stock on my Versys X300. Now, the vast majority of this, they don't have an interchangeable or removable rubber sleeve. So I mean with ridged platforms underneath, so you can't remove them off the trail to get some comfort, and then put the rubber pegs back on again to have, you know, the same highway comfort. So for me, what I'd recommend is, if you don't have those interchangeable foot pegs, it is to get one of these off-road pegs. They are ridged and they are wider than the stock pegs. and they help you in maintaining a standing posture without slipping off on the trail. And if you have ever ridden in mud or any wet condition with water crossings, you will understand the need for them, because before I got them, there were many times where my feet fell off the pegs while I was trying to stand up, and that really led to me losing control of the bike and dropping. But with these, you've got a lot more drainage around the platform and ridges to actually bite into the sole of your riding boots and keep you on the bike as stable as possible. Now, just below my foot pegs, you can see my side stand has a side stand extender. Well, for the most part, if you are riding on rather hard surfaces, you are unlikely to need them, especially if you're going to be on mostly gravel roads, hard packed roads, dirt roads, then they are mostly unnecessary. But if you're going to be riding for any length of time in softer terrain, maybe areas that can have maybe a 1 or 2 inches deep of mud, relatively firm but not entirely soft, well then these side stand extenders can help you park the bike without it tipping over. Of course, if in extremely soft terrain like mushy mud, then that's not going to help you, or really deep sand like in the Middle East, the sand dunes, those kind of terrain, a side stand extender is not going to stop your bike from sinking in. But they are good to have for the most part. Now, the next piece of equipment that I would recommend that you guys get would be to replace the stock shift lever arm on your motorcycle, but this really depends on what you get. Now, on the Kawasaki Versys X300, and for the most part, if you're going to get a cheap lower tier adventure bike like a 390 kdm adventure, they are not going to give you a off-road specific gear selector. They're going to give you those rigid metal arms with a rigid toe shifter. But having one of these is really good, because these are made for dirt bikes. You will have, if you don't have a manufacturer or aftermarket manufacturer that makes them specifically for your bike model, you can generally try and shop around and see if the toe shifters for particular dirt bikes actually will work on your model of ADV. Now, for the Kawasaki Versys X300, there is no aftermarket manufacturer that makes these kind of shift levers for the bike. So I had to get one of a 2016 YZ450F. And these are good because whenever you drop it on your left side, if you hit something hard and the impact goes onto your shift lever, if it's rigid, it's going to bend the lever. And for the most part, if it's a rather light drop, it's not going to bend the bike's shifter enough for it to be an issue. But what we want to try and prevent is that impact from traveling up the rigid shift lever into this dowel over here that connects into your gearbox. This thing is impossible to replace without costing you a lot of money to fix the gearbox itself in a professional workshop. So if you can prevent that damage from happening, all the better. Something like this is going to dissipate the force of any drop quite significantly before it transfers it into the main shift arm here and into your this shift dowel or rod, shift rod as I would call it. Now, another set of things that I would say would be nice to have, great to have replaced with if it ever breaks, but at the end of the day, absolutely not necessary if you choose not to have them. The first one would be clutch and brake levers. Now, those, for the most part, if you're honest with yourself as an ADV rider instead of a dirt rider, you're not going to be riding in places that are rough enough for the chance of these things to break to even consider getting foldable shift levers. But in the event that you one day do somehow get into an accident off-road where your shift levers are snapped or your brake levers are snapped, then getting breakaway levers will be a savior in future situations that you put yourself into that includes such an event. And the same thing would apply to mirrors as well. Stock mirrors or whatever you can scrounge up from your garage or your storage bin will work perfectly on ADV bikes, and for the most part even on dual sports that are road legal and are going to be used on the road to get from trailhead to trailhead. The reason is that for the most part most mirrors are rather sturdy enough to take a bit of a beating, with the exception of the glass of course, but at the same time most of the time you are not going to be riding in such harsh terrain as to drop it hard enough to smash your mirrors. Well, there are people that are like that, and they should get the kind of foldable mirrors, the ones that you can fold inward and not have it touch the ground when you drop. But those kind of riders are few and far between, and those kind of riders are not going to need the mirrors to begin with, because they're just going to be riding very near their property or wherever they are based around at, where having mirrors is not an issue to go without for an extended period of time. The other thing would be, of course, the turn signals. Now these ones at the front are stock, and you'll realize the ones at the back are small. That's because turn signals are another thing that is commonly broken on the trails, even if you don't drop them. Just by riding past trees and stuff like that, they are prone to getting tugged on and snapped, even if you are using those with a rubber stock like this ones, as opposed to the rigid ones like I have at the front. Now, I would, like I say, turn signals are very important to have on a road legal bike, especially if you're going to take them on the road to get from trailhead to trailhead or from your home to the trail. But at the same time, they are not absolutely necessary for you to go out there and get a good pair of turn signals suited for off-road trails, because even the small ones are going to be broken away. But in the event that you do break your stock turn signals, it's a good idea to get something like this, which are as small and unobtrusive as you can within the legal limits of your country or your state. Now for me, I need to get a certain minimum size and certain kinds of legal turn signals. So this is the best I can do. There are two other options that you can choose to get if you are able to get them. The first, of course, is LED strips. LED strips, if you mount them flush against, let's say, the tail of your bike here on the side of your brake lights, they are extremely difficult to damage in a drop because they are out of the way of any danger. So they are a great option if you can mount them and they are legal where you live. The other option that is more expensive but probably is going to be legal almost everywhere and still functional are those that are they can be easily dismounted before you go on the trail and then mounted back on by a magnetic clip. So I will probably link a description of it in the description below so that you know what I'm talking about, and of course there's going to be a picture of it on this video as well. Now the last thing that I'm going to say, that for almost any rider except for those that have a particular purpose for their bikes, and these things are absolutely unnecessary, totally unnecessary, and shouldn't even be considered because they are a waste of money performance mods. For the most part, your stock exhaust is on a modern ADV bike is going to be almost as light as any aftermarket exhaust that you can find. So the weight savings you get on an aftermarket exhaust on a modern ADV motorcycle is not going to be worth the price that you put into it. Of course, you can get a full system exhaust that actually provides a real performance increase on larger motorcycles with an ECU for you to map. But at the same time, they're absolutely useless on an ADV bike that you're gonna take off-road. Same with you know, upboring your motorcycle, new camshafts, new valve heads, all the shebang, the stuff that improves the performance of your engine and your drivetrain, powertrain. Those things are absolutely useless because off the road you are barely ever going to need any of that power, even if you're trying to go up a slope and you need as much torque as possible. Oh, there's a boar running across the field. Never mind. Anyway, those performance increases are absolutely useless. Save your money, use them to treat yourself to a nice meal or 5 and just forget about them. Alright, and so those were all the things that I did on my bike. Of course, there are some recommendations that I talked about, like breakaway shift levers that I would eventually like to have on my bike, but I don't. You can leave your comments down below as to what you put on your bike to enhance your viability off the road compared to the stuff that you get stock when you bought your bikes off the showroom floor. Now, if you like this video, do remember to give me a like and subscribe. If you don't, it's fine. It doesn't really matter anyway. I don't make a living off this channel, but do show me some form of support if you do like this video, and I will see you next time. Peace out. Bye bye.